Hi, welcome to or back to my channel. My name's Annie and today I'm going to be talking about the worst books that I read in 2024. So 2024 was actually a really good reading year for me. I read 135 books, which is the most I've ever read, or at least the most I've ever logged reading. I might have read more when I was a kid, but I don't know. So I did read a lot and I really liked most of the books I read actually. I think this year I was choosing a lot of books that I knew I liked, and I was also DNFing whenever I just wasn't really feeling it. So I have kind of a short list. I've got 5 books and 3 honorable mentions, and the honorable mentions are kind of just because I couldn't really remember why I hated them that much, but they were bad. Massive disclaimer for this video, I tend to block out books that I hate, so I've probably forgotten a bit about them. I will make sure that I am giving reasons to the best of my abilities, but if I have forgotten a bit about a book, I'm sorry. That's kind of why I made the honorable mentions list. I think the 5 I chose I actually do remember fairly well. I'm just gonna get into it. So for the honorable mentions, this is kind of no particular order. I have None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell as the first one. This was a really popular book that came out this year, a popular mystery thriller, and it was about, I think, a podcaster, and she meets this woman with like the same birthday as her, and then she becomes kind of obsessed with this woman's life, and then things happen from what I remember, but I can't remember basically anything about this book. Like, it was super forgettable to me. And what was really annoying about this actually is that the audiobook had full cast narration, which it was supposed to be like amazing on audio. And there was this one thing that really annoyed me, because we would go to this segment on the audiobook where it was, I can't remember if it was like a journalist interviewing people or a segment of another podcast or something, but the whole audiobook would be like one level of volume. And then every time we went to this guy that was like a reporter, the audio dropped to like become almost like you couldn't hear it at all. So then you had to turn up the audiobook, and then when the rest of it, like when that section stopped, then the volume would be too loud because you turned it up. I know that that's a small thing, but it really annoyed me, especially like you went to all the effort to have a full cast for this audiobook. It could have been really cool. You had like clips with background noise, like people walking down the street, the sound of like someone taking a sip of coffee type of vibe, and you overlooked this one thing. I don't know, I feel like I'm being picky, but I hated that. But mostly I just thought that this was super forgettable. And I also remember that I did not like the way it ended. I think it was super open-ended what happened, and there were all these plot twists happening that I wasn't really surprised by, and I didn't really care. Sorry, got a text.
Oh, got a text!
Message!
I just didn't really care. And I am not usually someone that doesn't like a open-ended ending, but I felt in this case we actually just knew nothing, because none of this is true. Like, we didn't know who was telling the truth and who wasn't, and I didn't care enough to try to figure it out, if that makes sense. So it was so nothing to me. Like, reading it was, I think I like instantly forgot about it as soon as I read it. The second honorable mention we have is Dragon Fruit by Makia Lucier. I hope I said that right. If not, I'm sorry. This is a Pacific Islander young adult fantasy book about this girl that really likes dragons, and there's this whole thing where dragon eggs are called dragon fruit, and if you, I think, eat a dragon egg, you get granted a wish for anything you want. This one was fine, but it was one of those books that if you've ever read a book that you felt like it was fine when you read it, and then in hindsight you were like, oh my god, it was actually really bad. This was that book for me. It didn't make any sense. There were plot points that were kind of just like randomly thrown in there and never went anywhere. There were lots of like little side plots that had no consequence on the overall story. The writing was a bit cringe. There was no real like romantic tension between the main character and her love interest. Overall, it was just a little bit like incoherent. Like there was not much to the book, and a lot of things didn't make sense after you read it. If you want a really in-depth breakdown of this book, Jan Agaton on her channel has a live show where they read this for her book club and they talk about it, and I was watching that and I was like, wow, they pointed out even more things that I didn't notice that like didn't have to be in the book. I did think the setting was cute sometimes, but I just felt that there was more that could have been explored, or even if one thing had been explored in depth a bit as opposed to a bunch of different things being explored not at all in depth, I would have liked that. I hope that made sense. Finally, I have Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. This is my last honorable mention, and this one is one of the ones that I've kind of wiped from my mind. I can barely remember anything about it, but I hated it. And I was really sad because I really wanted to like it. It sounded cool. It had something to do with some girls getting possessed by a demon or something. I liked the idea of this so much more than I liked the actual book. Like, I just felt like the writing was bad. I honestly am struggling with this one. Like, I could not really remember a single thing about it, but I had an actively bad time listening to the audiobook of this. Like, I was actively confused and bored. I was really bored. So those are my honorable mentions, and now I'm gonna get into the worst 5 books I read in 2024. I'm gonna go in order of like least egregious to the worst one. Number 5 is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I think this is gonna be a really unpopular choice, especially considering the movie came out at the beginning of 2024 and everyone probably read this book and really liked it. I thought the movie was just okay. I thought the book was worse. And I think part of why I disliked this book so much was because I had just finished my reread of The Hunger Games. Going from reading Mockingjay, which is like a brilliant book with fantastic writing, which Suzanne Collins kept up throughout the whole Hunger Games trilogy, to this book, which feels cool in concept, but actually just really boring in execution, was tough. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the book, and I thought it was way too long and it was boring. I was really disappointed. I was really disappointed by this book. The only reason it's number 5 is because I think other books are actually worse written, because Suzanne Collins on a bad day is still not like a bad writer. Like, of course she can write, but I just didn't care at all. Cornelius and Lucy's relationship felt super insta-lovey, especially in the book. Actually, they really annoyed me in the book. I found them insufferable. She was very, not even manic pixie dream girl, but just kind of like, maybe, actually. I'm struggling with this one. Anyway, I hated them. And for some reason, as soon as he met her, he was like, oh my God, I've been waiting my whole life for this person. I think I'm in love with her. And I was like, so you think she's hot. And you like that she sings songs. I did actively block this out of my memory, so that's why I can't give the best review. But it was bad, and I'm scared about the new Haymitch one. And yeah, I just didn't enjoy it. The movie was slightly better, but like, don't care. Book number 4 is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is a very interesting book. It was interesting for me as a reader. I started out fine, then I hated it like nothing else. Like, it was actually really hard for me to even listen to it. Like, I considered DNFing so many times, and then it got kind of like bearable, and then I was kind of intrigued, but like overall I think I kind of left the book with a bad taste in my mouth. I just didn't like it. So yeah, a bit of a confusing reading experience. Definitely not the worst thing I've read, but pretty bad. Doesn't really make me want to read anymore, Ashley Poston. I don't know that I'll be picking up more of her stuff. Anyway, The 7-Year Slip is about a woman that lives in this apartment that like I think it's her aunt gave to her. after she passed away. And there's this thing that happens in the apartment where sometimes you'll go in just like on a random day and then someone will be there because it like the apartment travels either 7 years forward or back. Forward or back in the past or future. Anyway, big failing of this book for me. The question I was asking the entire time is, why is this apartment not going forward in time? Because she mentions that the apartment can go forward in time, but it only ever takes our main character back. And it's supposed to be, I guess, like when you need it the most and stuff like that. So I guess that explains it, but I don't know. It just felt a little bit like too convenient that it would only be taking her back and never forward. But anyway, our main character meets the guy that was living in the apartment 7 years ago, and they fall in love. They can't leave the apartment, so they kind of fall in love in there. And at the same time, we follow our main character meeting someone. She meets him in present day. I don't think that's a spoiler for anyone. So the whole thing is like the guy that she meets in the apartment that she's kind of currently falling in love with is different and more idealistic and optimistic than the guy that she knows him to be today. And it's like, can they make it work? And they do. They're super cringy. It was really bad. I think I felt a little nauseous listening to this one. I just couldn't do it. Like, there were some scenes where I remember vividly, like, they're sitting at the dining table in the apartment when she like meets him for the first time, and they literally start saying like words at the same time. So like she'll be talking and she'll be like, I just realized all this time I just felt, and then she'll like trail off, and then at the same time they both said lonely and like look at each other, and then it's like a whole moment, and I just couldn't deal with that. I thought it was so bad. It was also super predictable. Like, I saw the whole way that the book was gonna go, and you know how like for a Hallmark movie or something, you know exactly how it's gonna go, but you're kind of like, oh well, maybe the journey will be fun. That was kind of what I was hoping for this book, because half a chapter in, I knew exactly what was happening, but I didn't enjoy the journey getting there. So that's the 7 years left. Number 3 is The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. I read this recently for a cozy fall reading vlog, and it was bad. I mean, it has a like 3.2 on Goodreads or something, so I guess I shouldn't have expected a lot. The one pro of this book is that it has cute little recipes at the end of every chapter that is super cute. I haven't tried any of them, but it is really cute. This book was really confusing. It was about this girl that like lives in a small town, and she's got this curse which affects her love life. Like, apparently she's gonna have 3 heartbreaks in her life, and after her third one, her magic's gonna be gone. Like, she's kind of witchy, but her magic means a lot to her. Spoiler alert, that that curse means nothing. By the end of the book, it's irrelevant and it's not mentioned. So I don't know why it's in the whole first chapter and like first part of the book and probably part of the synopsis, but it doesn't matter. So actually forget about that, because it doesn't matter, but you really think it does the whole time. There's a lot happening in this book, lots going on. Her grandma's dying from cancer, which is super sad. The grandma's cool. Her old love interest, like her first boyfriend, her first love, moves back into town and she steals his dog. I'm not making it up. And he just thinks it's cute. He just thinks that that's cute, and he lets her have it. There's no substance there, by the way. That I did really hate that he had no character trait. His name was Jake, if that tells you anything. His only character trait was being her high school sweetheart. So I guess we're just supposed to assume that he's likable and that they like each other, even though they have maybe 3 conversations in the book, maybe 4. So that was super underdeveloped. There's this whole thing about her brother has like run away from home because he doesn't want to be part of the magic stuff. For a book that focused so much on cooking and baking, the whole thing was really underdone. And that's The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic. Number 2, the second worst book I read this year, is another really unpopular pick, because I think it's probably going to be on a lot of people's best books. and that's Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This book is about a vampire named Misery, which is super slay. I actually really went into this with high hopes, and I think that's why this is so high up there. Her name's Misery. She has an arranged marriage to like the werewolf Alpha. It's some sort of peace treaty thing between their people. It's kind of like a trade. Like, my daughter, the vampire princess, is gonna go live with you for a year, and one of your werewolf pack people is gonna live with me for a year so we can keep the peace type of thing. But then there's this whole conspiracy political stuff going on, which is very much the background of this story, and thank God it is, because it made no sense, but it really annoyed me because I could not figure out what was going on for the life of me with that whole plot line, and I didn't really care. There was an annoying kid in this. I really didn't like her, but I think we were really supposed to, and she is the love interest, like, younger sister. I think maybe my hopes for this were too high. And you might be thinking, you know, Annie, this sounds like just kind of a fine book. It would be just fine if not for the smut, which was scary. If you don't know what nodding is, I'm not going to tell you, but this book has it, and it has a lot of it. And I was a little bit scared, and it just really was not for me. I will happily read more Ali Hazelwood. I don't want to knock her. Like, I really liked Love Theoretically when I read that. I don't know. Honestly, this might be tied with Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic. Like, they were both bad. No, I do think this one. I really hated this one. I really didn't like it. I kept hoping it was going to get better too. And I know that that's not a popular opinion. I know a lot of people love this. So take that for what you will. Okay, and number one, my worst book of the year, if you've been watching my channel anytime in the past month or two, you probably know, it's The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laura Gilmore. Now, the other books on this list, I have to say, like, I had a really good reading year, and I did dislike these books, but none of them bring the absolute rage out in me like this book does. I just think this was hideous, and I also know that it's probably one of the most read books this year by people in the booktube community and just people at large, especially in fall. Everyone was reading The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and I had the worst time of my life. It was actually really painful for me to finish, made me really angry. And this one's kind of fresh, so I can rant about it. This is about this girl who moves to a small town to take over this cafe called the Pumpkin Spice Cafe from her grandmother, who wants to go to Aruba or something and retire. Then there's this guy, Paul, I think his name is Paul, and he is like the farmer in the town, and he's grumpy. She's well, actually, she's like not really sunshine. She's really weird, but he's grumpy, okay? And they fall in love, but it's a whole thing where it's like, oh, he's been heartbroken in the past, and the town's really protective of him. The town's always meddling in his business, so he like wants to keep it private, and she's just weird. I honestly think she's my least favorite character I've read this year. She makes no sense. Let me tell you about her. I feel like her name is Julie. We're gonna call her that. I'm not sure if it is, but I think it fits her. So Julie sucks. Laura Gilmore is a pen name, and you can guess what she's inspired by. Gilmore Girls, okay? And I love Gilmore Girls, and don't do this to them. Don't do this to them. Because this book felt really rude. It felt like it was ripping off Gilmore Girls, but it made it so bad. So clearly, in this book, Julie is supposed to stand in for Lorelai Gilmore, who I love. Am
I more beautiful today than I was yesterday?
And this guy, Paul, is supposed to be Luke. And it's like Gilmore Girls, but like slightly different, so that I guess she can't get sued or something. But like, it's Gilmore Girls. Julie has to be the worst written character I've read so far this year. I read a whole book about her, and half of it was narrated by her. I really hope everyone's doing okay over there, sorry. And the other half is narrated by Paul, and I don't really know anything about her. She was working this job as an executive assistant, and her boss died, and she found him dead at his desk. And that's really traumatic, by the way. I'm so sorry, Julie, like that sucks. But then she was like, oh my God, am I gonna just work myself to death too? Like 9 to 5 suck and I wanna try slow living. And so she becomes the owner of a business. So I don't really know the logic on that. She does kind of mention that offhand in the book. She's like, I guess maybe this isn't the right thing to go into if I really want to lower my high cholesterol or something. But she's just kind of like, I'll just do it anyway. She has this weird theory that the cafe is haunted because she hears a scratching outside, and she's very like damsel in distress, and she's always crying and like falling into Paul's arms, and like she wears little raccoon pajamas and he finds it adorable, and she's just not like other girls, and she always needs to be saved. And I hate that. I hate that for women in general. But I hate it especially for her. Like, if you really want to know my full thoughts, just watch the video because I can say it a lot better than I am now. I think I'm in this like in the depths of hatred right now. It's hard for me to get out words, but basically this book had bad writing, improper punctuation, bad grammar. The plot made me angry. At one point, it's like Paul wants to make the relationship private, keep it private, because everyone's always in his business. Then Julie's really sad. She like cries about it. And then finally Paul's like, oh my God, let's make it public. Then they hold hands in public. And then Julie's like, you know what? I actually think I'm actually a little bit scared of commitment. And then 5 minutes later, she's not scared anymore. There's this thing where Paul realizes like he has abandonment issues and trust issues, and he realizes it because his friends tell him he does, and he's like, oh my God, you're right. And then they're all solved in the space of that whole conversation. And that's like the third act conflict is like he has trust issues and I don't know what's going on with her. I hope I'm at least a little coherent in this video. The thing that made me like personally angry and like kind of have a very visceral like ew reaction to this book were two things, but they're linked. One, the smut, just awful and scary. At one point he says, we're like in his perspective, and he says, I just can't stop mauling this woman any chance I get. Mauling is crazy. We're just gonna leave that there. But the relationship is so heteronormative as to actually freak me out. Like, she's super infantilized and it's gross, and he's very like, oh my God, is she crying? I have to go fix it for her. I need to fix everything for her. Oh my God, can I fix it for you, Julie? And I just find that really unattractive, and I hated it. So those are my worst books of 2024. Let me know your worst books of 2024 in the comments below. Let's spread some negativity, please, in a nice way, not to each other, but just to books. And let me know why you hated them. I want to know. Let me know if you read any of the books on this list and if you liked them, or if you hated them, because both is valid. And if you did like any of these, I love that for you, and I recognize my opinion is just my opinion, okay? Also, if you're watching to this point in the video, leave a thumbs down emoji to spread general kind of contempt for bad books that we read last year. And give this video a like if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I will be doing my best books video very soon, so keep an eye out for that. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. I feel like this video has been really chaotic, so I'm sorry about that. But I will see you in a new video soon. I love you. Goodbye.